I would like to welcome our panel members to the podium. Gabriel, Rob, and also joining us in this panel sessions are Dr. Tausif Ahmed, Senior VP, Head of Clinical and Biopharmaceutics from Mankind Pharma. Dr. MiRa Jacobs, a Division Director from CDRH. Dr. Mihir Jaiswal, a Technical Liaison and Senior Regulatory Health Project Manager from FDA's OPQ. Dr. Jinzhong, Acting Deputy Director, Office of Drug Evaluation Science from FDA's CDER. And Dr. Partha Roy, a Office Director of the Office of Bioequivalence, FDA's OGD. And Anil Sachdeva, a Vice President, a Global Head Regulatory Affairs from Biocon. Welcome our panel members. So we have 3 panel members joining us virtually. That's Louis, MiRa, and Tausif. Okay, I would really encourage you guys to ask questions, both using the microphone in the room and also type your questions in the chat, and we will make sure we will entertain your questions. So we already got our first question. Marham, go.
Hi, I really appreciate the discussion. Gabriel, your presentation about context of use is very relevant to the discussion of artificial intelligence. And Rob gave a nice discussion about how that context use might be applied to generic drug development and generic drug assessment. Can you comment a little bit more about some of the nuances in context of use and artificial intelligence as applied to it, like versus large language models versus machine learning? And those are 2 very different things, is my understanding. Like generative AI can encompass both, but at the same time, the nuances that are raised when you apply them to generic drugs. And what is your understanding of generic drugs in the context of your comments about context of use? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the question. My sense is that the context of use and the model choice should be disparate, should be separated. So the context of use as well as the question of interest really guides what you need, what the gap is in terms of your drug development process. And then picking the model from there depends upon what would be the best answer for that question. So that might be LLM in some cases, it might be traditional machine learning. It really depends on what the question is in the context of use that you're looking for, what you're trying to categorize, what would be the best method to be able to achieve that end goal.
Thank you, Gabriel. Anything else to add from any of the panel members? Okay. If not, I want to ask some questions. I want to start from the global alignment. So MiRa, I'm going to ask you the first question. So really, given the CDRH experience in regulating the AI-enabled medical device, and that CDRH also released a draft guidance on the topic, how have CDRH and CDER been coordinating and sharing expertise and learning in this space?
Thanks for the question. So I think that probably the easiest place to point is just this last year, all of the product centers released a document together that you can find on the FDA website still about how we're working together. And that document really speaks to kind of a high-level framework for how we're trying to information share across the agency a little bit more consistently on the topic of AI. But I think it's a broader sentiment that it's really important that we're sharing learnings across our centers. As it relates to AI specifically and the draft guidance that Gabriel provided an introduction to, as well as, as you mentioned, CDRH released a guidance on AI content for device submissions on the same day, actually. We're in fact on each other's working groups. This has been going on since the initial drafting, so you will see a lot of through lines. We really aim to be consistent where we could, whether that was regarding terminology, basic comments, or content, sorry, risk-based approach, et cetera. But, of course, understanding that the applications here are different, looking at sort of the development of drugs versus the regulation of AI-enabled devices themselves. And of course, as we're going through hopefully finalization processes, but comment resolution processes on both of those guidances now, we're staying in lockstep very closely as well. I think it's also probably worth noting that CDRH has a guidance related to VP40 as well that was finalized back in 2023, looking at the credibility framework that has really threaded its way through CDER's guidance for computational modeling and using computational modeling for device submissions as well. So there's a lot of consistency across the centers in that sense. And we've really been emphasizing the need to see that across our uses of AI, both internally and externally.
Wow, really good to hear that word repeatedly, consistency. So Gabriel, I'm going to come to you. I mean, just kind of follow up to what MiRa just said. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just wondering how you guys are thinking about developing models inside the FDA and using data or potentially like experimental toxicity data for that one drug company kind of created, using that toxicity data and putting it into a model that then helps inform decisions across other drug applications and other, for other companies.
Anyone want to address that toxicity modeling question, toxicity assessment?
Or just any data,
Yeah.
I think we typically, so I'll try my first pass. So typically when sponsors provide data to FDA, we use a lot of that data to help our internal processes in terms of understanding knowledge, gaining knowledge from those different applications and helping us create a more robust sort of lifting the tide to raise all ships type of framework so that we can have those learnings and be able to compare internally to say, what is precedent setting? What are we able to glean from these specific applications? And what we can use in the future to help us make have the conversation with industry. How do we ensure that we're state of the art and keeping pace with all of you? Thanks.
Yeah, generally we, again, industry data that's submitted in applications, that's not public information, so it doesn't get released through this. But certainly in the FDA, we're interested in, understanding, do predictive models predict things? And, one of the things that we, occasionally might do is evaluate, is something predictable based on data that's been submitted to us, and say, in a broad sense, like how well did this prediction work across different data sets? That's not releasing any of the data itself, but it helps the community develop better models. And I think that's a framework where, collaborative environments and some of the FDA roles in regulatory science can be useful, balancing that with the way that we, protect the confidentiality of data that's submitted in applications.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just one comment. Also, now we have ELSA, which is generative AI, and it's using foundational model, and so we don't necessarily have to use any of data to train. In fact, we don't use any of the data to train, but rather we think from the perspective that we have this problem to solve, or this is an area where we can gain efficiency. Now, let's see how best we can make use of ELSA. So that's also been game changer in terms of the thought process. We don't need to train model. We don't need training set, test set. We already have foundation model. We just have to figure out how to implement within our use, our task, our workflows.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just I think there are two aspects of it. One is sort of the data that we already have, and this is not just the talks, but any of the other kind of data. Already the data that we have, so we can glean through that data, extract that information in a format which is much more usable by the reviewer at a faster rate, right? I mean, that's an information. But then the other question is, are we training our models with the data that we have? And the answer is no, as far as I understand. That can give you a more predictive situation where, it might not be absolutely accurate, maybe in the future it will be, but that's a completely different aspect of it. Just wanted to mention, but at this time, I don't think, we are training our model with the data that we have across applications or applicants.
I have a comment on this. Since the agency has a lot of data and they're developing their tools based on that data. So from industry point of view, can there be collaboration between the agency and industry so that there is a common tool be used by the industry as well, so that things becomes easier, as Dr. Lionberger was saying, use AI tool to improve the quality of the applications. So if we use these tools, because industry, if we see as an individual company, our data is very, very thin. Even if we develop any AI tool, this will not give that meaningful tool. But FDA is sitting with the mountain of data. And if there could be some kind of collaboration, I know there's a proprietary information, there's a patent and copyrights are involved. But if we can bypass those legal framework and then do some kind of collaboration, then that is going to help to reduce our development time as well as review time. And the common goal between the industry and agency is to have the faster approval of the quality and the safe drug product. So that's from industry point of view.
It was interesting. I'll plug the workshop that happened last week. The recording should be out within the next few weeks or so. One of the presenters from a pharmaceutical company had mentioned that they're looking into recruiting people for a federated learning environment, which again, this is not with FDA, but it's an interesting thought piece that they would be able to really harness the learnings and the models from the industry together to promote their own learning, again, outside the FDA, but to really gather resources, aggregate resources to improve all.
Thank you. So go ahead.
I have a question for Dr. Partha Roy. So can you share something about using AI for data integrity issue for in vivo and in vitro bioequivalence assessment? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a breakout session also, and I think we also kind of wanted to learn exactly how the industry is using AI or any kind of tools to make sure that your data is consistent within the application. And that's sort of our goal. I think we are sort of scratching the surface here. We are exploring different ways. And really the intent is sort of, look at, sort of using it as like a pre-screening tool to look across applications and also based on the data that we have. And I think Rob talked about PK data warehouse, for example. If we are having the seventh, generic application with a drug, with some formulation, can we now use that information based on the reference information that we already have across applications? Again, from a metadata perspective, it's not like we are relying on a specific application or specific data, but overall data, and can the AI tool give us some kind of indicators that maybe we need to kind of now get the human in the loop and look at those applications more carefully. That's really the intent. But again, I think we're exploring at this point. We are not there yet.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question. We have only two industry representatives on the panel. So we have one from Biocon and one from Mankind Pharma. So Rob mentioned how he envisions the industry using the generic industry, using AI in the application, which is for reviewing completeness of ANDA or potential issues with ANDA. But what do you actually do on the ground? Because Anil mentioned carefully, I mean, rightfully so, that the amount of data that the agency sees is much more, like probably 100 times more, if not 1,000 times more than the individual companies. So maybe is there some tools you actually using at Biocon and at Mankind? So just comment on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. So we will start from you, Anil.
Okay, sure. No, thank you. So yeah, we are currently evaluating a lot of AI tools, and the main goal is that how we can reduce the development time. So using those tools, doing some excipient screening, formulation screening, and if do some model-informed bioequivalence support. And also we are evaluating the AI models where we can have this the writing the application itself. So using this FDA ECTD model, and then from the source data so that the application can be written automatically, so we can reduce that time, and also check all the past deficiency and see the gap analysis. So those kind of things we are evaluating and exploring right now. And we are seeing how we can use in our day-to-day application writing. The main goal is we reduce the development time, compilation time, and then since FDA is also using ELSA and the other tools, so the review time is reduced, ultimately approval time is reduced, and we can bring the safe and quality medicine for the patients of the USA. So, thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to you, Tausif.
Yeah, thank you. Hope I'm audible. Yeah, so see, from in my current organization as well as in the prior organizations, we are trying to use AI ML in almost every area, primarily starting from product ideation and selection, then some role in smart formulation development. And as Rob mentioned, we are also developing some in-house tools for nitrosamine risk assessment. But some of the areas which we are focusing more, where we have a plethora of data, is biopharmaceutics risk assessment. We generate the in vitro dissolution data in multimedia, in different biorelevant media. So what we are trying to do is, can we use all that data and develop an AI ML model which will kind of guide us in development of a biorelevant media, and trying to link it with the BE data which we have. So we do around 50-60 bioequivalent studies in a year, and if we collate historically the entire data, can we really develop a kind of a in vitro in vivo relationship which will help not only in our internal decision making, can we increase the probability of bio success? So that is one area where we are trying to really focus. But again, as I said, efforts are being made, but the challenge which we see is primarily two. One, kind of getting the data, the cleaning of data, putting it in the right format, data quality, QC of the data, that is a challenge. And then other is, I think Rob also indicated on that front, the management support also becomes a challenge. The time, effort, and expertise which gets into this, the pushback which we get is, why can't we do a BE study? What is the risk versus benefit in doing all this activity versus doing a BE study or doing clinical studies? I think we are still not there, but I think a lot of effort is being made, and once we are kind of show some success, definitely things will change. But in short, what I'm trying to say is, the data which we have accumulated over a period of last couple of years, both in vitro and in vivo, we're trying to collate that data and derive some meaningful information from that.
Thank you. So I want to have a quick follow-up question to Luis and Gabriel. You both really emphasized in your talk that you want to encourage early engagement with FDA. So I want to hear from you both, like, what a successful early engagement looks like from the agency's perspective. And I think this will be really helpful to our industry colleagues. They want to know what makes those conversations most productive. So we will go from you, Luis.
Perfect, thanks. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
So great. So in the last slide I shared, there's a whole set of frameworks or pathways rather to offer to stakeholders for early engagement, and we're starting to create even more, particularly the AI group I mentioned in the slide deck. So the first in the last in the first pillar. We want to be sure we have early conversation before there's a lot of development happen. I mean, if that is the choice of the stakeholder, it's good for us to understand the sort of the concepts, the idea, what the challenges from a regulatory perspective may also be. That allows us time to digest the information, to understand what may actually end up coming via regulatory submissions. It is I have to say that, I've been through many stakeholder meetings of such nature, a lot of them through what we call portfolio and technology meetings, which are very informal. And what I see is actually there's probably in terms of domains, there's a repetition. There's certain things that come quite often on sort of clinical trial side and the pharmacovigilance side, but the collection of ideas is quite disparate. It's very different. So having that early engagement helps us understand what it potentially could come in the regulatory submissions. It helps us understand what sort of considerations we need to take into account. It helps us understand the variability of ideas that are coming through and overall address the potential issue of the stakeholder. But broadly, it also impacts how we can draft guidance development. And as I mentioned, this is still an ongoing process at EMA. So having an early conversation is helpful for the stakeholders and for the agency in multiple aspects. As I said, certainly reduces our uncertainty. It helps us foster smart guidance. And from the stakeholder perspective, that means potentially faster submission times. Thanks.
Thank you, Luis.
Yeah, I think we're largely aligned with our EMA colleague, Luis, and EMA itself. So I think early and often, as we stress over and over again, is something that we really implore, especially when these technologies or if they have not yet been approved in different familiar paradigms, drug development paradigms, to your knowledge, hasn't been approved yet. Having some baseline to say, like, is this something that FDA would be has an appetite for, something that we would approve? I think it's more of a conversation to say, we have this technology, we're asking this specific question, we have this specific context of use, and this is our perceived model risk. Those are the baseline foundational steps that we really ask for sponsors to come to have a springboard of a conversation to then answer some of those questions that Luis had noted earlier. What are some of the challenges that you're facing? We really want to collaborate in terms of understanding where some of your challenges are and where we would really request additional information in terms of transparency, explainability, interpretability, what type of documentation you might need, again, commensurate of that model risk. So again, as a baseline, you'd be surprised that some sponsors come and say, we want to use AI for our drug development program. And, that's a really open-ended question or comment. We need something to really sink our teeth into to help promote a conversation and be able to help guide and share our thinking in terms of where we are and where the sponsor is in terms of how that would benefit their development program. Thanks.
Any additional thoughts? Okay, so I want to give a little bit time to our virtual attendees for the virtual questions. So, Adria, can you proceed to a microphone?
Okay, that's fine.
No, we will come back. We will welcome you back just a little bit.
Hi, yes, we got quite a lot of questions on ELSA in the chat box. So the audience, the virtual attendees are interested in understanding what we're using ELSA for. Are we using it for response generation, for any aspects of our review process? What LLM model is ELSA based on? And can we give some, are we using it only for internal FDA use? Are we willing to share it with the public?
Yeah.
Multiple questions.
So Mihir and I can chime in for those questions. So my name is Jin Liu. I'm the acting deputy director for Office of Drug Evaluation Sciences and the Office of New Drug Cedar. So to take those questions, first of all, ELSA is a generative AI tool being developed by the FDA. As Rob mentioned, is within a secured system within the FDA that is ensuring all the confidential data are safe. So it's more like internal use that's answering the very last part of that question. And what people have been using that? For the FDA people, that is more like assistant supporting FDA reviewers with 5 major categories. First of all, it's about summarizing information. Then it's about comparing information. Then people have been using that to generate some coding. I think Rob mentioned regarding quantitative modeling, trying to facilitate those processes. And then people are using pre-specified information like the reg document library, which is retrieval augmented generation. That is ensuring that we can retrieve the information in an accurate way from a pre-specified document, like the guidances. And then people are also using that to refine the language. That's how people are generally using that as assistance, trying to support and facilitate their primary review work. I also hear questions from the bunch of questions have been asking about why is that internal use for the FDA reviewers, and that's also the FDA reviewers have been using that. So Mihir, feel free to chime in, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. As Jane said, ELSA is for internal FDA use only, and that's by design, because first of all the sponsor data are confidential, proprietary, and we want to make sure that whenever we are using LLMs and other systems, they stay confidential, they stay proprietary. So ELSA is not connected to outside world, period. It is within FDA's GovCloud. All the data actually originates from the FDA premises, and that's how we are using it. And primarily for this security purpose, at least right now, we do not have plan to share that with anyone outside of agency.
I also feel like there is a question about which large language model is being used. There are 2 models available for the ELSA. One is developed by Anthropic, which is Cloud Sonnet 4.0 version. The other one is being developed by Google, which is Google Gemini 2.5. I hope we answered all the questions. Perfect.
Thank you, Jing and Mihir. Yeah, go to next.
Hi, I'm Matthew Thomas. I'm an ex-FDA. Good to see many of my colleagues here. And now I'm a consultant for In Silico Minds. So the quick question I have, I've had the privilege of serving in the AISC. So the quick question I have is, you did mention that there were about 1,000 applications that have included AI. I'm presuming that having OII, the Office of Inspections and Investigations, as part of your team, has resulted in some kind of actual inspections of AI data. So what kind of observations have you found, or situations where you felt that the data could not be used? So any practical examples? That is one question. And the quick follow-up to Lucy's questions about how soon do we contact the agency? Both EMA or any regulatory agency. Can you give us some practical ways of, do we send a letter, or do we call somebody, or how do we engage, right? Because that's where the big question is out in the industry. How do we reach out to somebody? Is there a formal process, or is it a simple phone call, or how do we do that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's do the last one first, right? So for the especially for, for the generic program, which is the focus of this audience, right? If you want to ask questions about AI models, you have to use the existing processes to engage with FDA. And those are the control correspondences, which are, for those of you not in the generic industry, which are written questions to FDA. right? And FDA answers thousands of those every year, and there's a guidance on that. So you can ask questions about any of that. You can also, we have also for models, we have a model-informed evidence pilot program specifically for any kind of application that uses a novel modeling approach. So if you're using an AI, an AI model is a model, right? So it's encompassed in that. So you can use that program to meet with FDA. As well as if you're developing complex generics products, we have a meeting program under the user fee program that you can come in and talk about models as part of the development of complex products. So but you have to follow the rules and the systems that were negotiated by your industry representatives through your user fee agreement around what's accessible. If you'd like more, then
Oh, just one thing to add. If you want FDA to provide some inputs on your models, we also have parts we call model master file. So we suggest you explore that mechanism as well. So Gabriel?
Thanks, Rob, for adding some color to that question too and respond. So there are a number of ways. So you can have meetings that have regulatory decision making, or you can have listening sessions. We've listed several of those, I think it's pretty exhaustive at the end of the guidance, along with ways to contact those types of forums. So we really encourage you to use those wherever you feel like your specific model fits. And then if it's attached to a development program, then our typical meeting types, type ABC, are ways to engage with the industry as well. Your question regarding, what was the first question, which was? I see. So, right, you mentioned we have over 1,000 that we've seen that we're still working through in terms of being able to categorize those. CEDAR, we can't give specifics for proprietary information. Also, I'm not a representative of the Office of Investigations and Investigations. We're only looking at CEDAR, so I can't speak to their learnings, fortunately. Thanks.
Oh yeah, Luis, you want to share anything from your perspective?
No, I think this is a very FDA-centric discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a very specific question about the application of AI, or maybe I don't know if it is applicable. One of the, I think, most beneficial tool that FDA has currently to our industry is inactive ingredient database. But it's currently limited to my understanding adults only. Is there a way to expand that to pediatric population using the AI tool?
I mean, I think that's not something that's as you mentioned, that's not a property of the current system. It is something that from a research perspective, we're looking at how you might do that, but it's not something that's in production or available at this time. But it is something that, we've heard that it would be of interest to lots of different groups in various aspects of development.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very beneficial to public as well, since.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things, we recognize that that's going to be important. We do have some information, obviously, internally that we use sort of our own database and, curated across years and applications. But that's definitely an use case we can sort of look into. But again, there is nothing that we can announce here, but we definitely, that's one. I mean, we have heard from different stakeholders about that.
Yeah, this is ongoing research within FDA, and we will share some update once we gather more data in this area. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the 3 outstanding talk this morning, and we learned a lot from you guys. So my question, when Gabriel, you presented more than 1,000 AI cases have been submitted since 2016. So I'm wondering how many of them really come from the big company and how many of them come from a small company. So because the AI supposed to save our money and the time, but because the AI tool becomes so expensive commercially, and that's a small company cannot afford to use these AI tools. So I'm just wondering whether this AI tendency will benefit even a larger company and will make the small company suffocate. So just wondering, FDA have any strategy try to help the small company to be able to survive under this kind of environment? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. I encourage you to read the article that came out in 2016, I believe, with one of the corresponding authors actually in the room, Chilio, who led the research. Not sure. I would encourage you to read it to determine whether the analysis was performed to determine big versus small company. And then also some of these engagement pathways that I touched on earlier at the end of the guidance are ways for developers for other companies that may not be attached to a specific drug pathway or a drug program to be able to engage with the industry and have some of those discussions and listening sessions on that front as well.
Thank you. Liang from UCSF. A question regarding the one technical question, another technical question for regulatory. So for the technical question for the AI use in drug R&D, seems there's a lack of clear understanding of value creation, where AI can have created the value how much bigger than using conventional approaches. So I have been learning from others as well, especially in the field pharmacometrics, if you don't have a humongous data. So yes, AI can do, machine learning can do lots of things slightly better than the conventional approaches, but people don't feel there's a big value creation. That's some of the sentiment in the field. If you have no access to the data, then there's always a challenge. I think associated with the earlier question, how would the smaller or startup firms enjoy the same benefit that AI can provide? That's associated with my second question. In addition to all the meeting mechanisms you just mentioned, this for Gabriel, Rob, and Jinzhong, potentially. So can we use model master files? So if there's an AI approach with sufficient data support, mature enough, so can we utilize model master file to have a nice place in FDA that can archive the best practice, serve as a benchmark for future uses, which can also potentially recycled by other firms, or even within the same firm?
All right, let's talk. Maybe I'll answer your first question. You're talking about, what about, and this I think mentioned the other points of smaller companies. I don't have a lot of data, right? And so I think you have to think about that. Like, this is, Liang knows this. One of my criticisms about the pharmacometrics community is that it's sort of a data-driven approach. Like, can I use a pharmacometrics model to analyze my data, right? But there's another part of modeling which is more mechanistic, right? And that mechanistic model, more of a PBPK framework, those models aren't driven by, I have some data and I'm analyzing my data. It's driven by physics, reality, and the models encapsulating reality. And so I think if AI tools move toward I'm working from first principles, or that are built on a bigger foundation than sort of proprietary data from a study, then there's the possibility of using them in the context of smaller companies, but also in the context of generic drug development, right? The whole purpose of generic drug development is generic companies don't have to do new clinical studies and generate clinical data, right? So that's why more mechanistic, physics, reality-based models are going to be much more valuable to the generic industry, because they can make predictions when you have to generate the whole point of the generic industry is develop products without reproducing the data generation. So I think that's a fundamental area. And can AI models help us accelerate our predictive modeling approaches, where it's not sort of, well, I need to have data from a study to do the analysis, right? Where I can actually do things based on things that are publicly available in the literature more broadly. and, and use sort of more mechanistic methods to help generalize them. So I'll leave Leon to go back to UCSF and actually do that.
Any comment on model master file?
We definitely welcome our industry colleagues to explore this mechanism. And this is under Type 5 drug master file. And if you can submit your AI models or machine models through that mechanism, and we will provide our inputs and technical response in that regard. So as Liang said, this is really a mechanism that encourages modeling, sharing, modeling, standardization, and we're really encouraging you guys to consider this route. Thank you, Liang.
Yeah, and something to add to what Rob said, I think in principle, I know it's a lot of AI models available, AI talks available, but problem has to be what's solving with or without AI. And that's what would define the value of AI. And I say that is because of, again, recent advances of LLM. If you think of LLM or any foundational models that are out there for images and videos and all sorts of stuff, you don't need data to use them. You just need a problem, a well-defined problem that you can explain to LLM, right? And you can use them. That has something that Rob mentioned, the success of ELSA that is delivered in such a short time, because you don't have to spend months and days training data. And that's the advantage of having such a model. So if you have a problem that's worth solving, there are ways of using AI or combining AI with conventional methods. We are already doing that throughout the world, where we are combining AI with RAG, which is nothing but kind of search that we've been using for years. So there are so many ways if we have a problem that's worth solving. So I think that can be the approach, and then we can plug AI wherever is needed. That can be model development, using foundational models, using AI with conventional techniques, and the possibilities are endless.
I think too, thanks Mihir for that. It's a great response. I think along with the DMF, I would encourage you to look at the DDT or Drug Development Technology Program. There was a pilot program that was just finalized, and now is it had completed the pilot and we rolled it out, which is called iStand. So similar to the COEs or clinical outcome assessments and biomarkers, this is another pathway where you can look to sort of standardized technologies through the DDT program. So I think maybe that might be a better fit than the DMF, depending upon what your question and what you hope to glean, and what value you hope to glean from that specific model and use case. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought I won't get a chance, but first of all, thank you very much. This is a very exciting event. And like any new technology, there's always a beginning and there's a potential when we combine the internet, AI, and all that is unlimited. And I think congratulations, Rob and Professor Foley and everybody who's involved in that. This is the first conference where I'm seeing British and the US authorities on the same platform. It's also very encouraging. The question that I have is, maybe it's not the right time to answer this, but what is the scope of this AI effort? It's a tremendous amount of work. And it's going to be, I understand, it's going to be improved with the more and more data coming, but models are data dependent. How is going to help the agency from the regulatory standpoint to harness their development? I'll give you one or two examples. For example, Rob touched a very sensitive area, which is very helpful to the industry if it's resolved. Like for a given kind of product or given reference product, what kind of potential deficiencies can happen. But then there is also one, I'm speaking from my experience in the industry, a lot of inconsistency in the deficiencies or how the reviews are looked at. And sometimes there are more than one deficiency cycles or letters. And people are surprised that at the 6 months ago, nobody talked about this. right? I'm not saying this, I'm not criticizing the agency, I'm just bringing to your attention some of the things that happen. Other thing is that I hope that is going to help the agency make some timely decision, but the correct decisions. I have been personally in a situation where simple Q1, Q2 sameness decision made by the agency was wrong. And our team spent 9 months bringing whatever science you can under the sky. And 9 months later, we receive a letter. Oh, by the way, we were wrong. You are okay. The development was delayed by 9 months and they missed the first to file opportunity. Again, that can happen. It happened even when I was working at the agency, but nonetheless, now it's a different, when I started with the agency, there were no computers, but now it's a different time. So the other is that sometimes the agency makes exceptions to what the guidance expectations are. For example, it's a progressive, I would say, exception. It's not a negative. Like now deviation from the standard recommendation that has been in place for 25 years for the Q1, Q2 sameness of respiratory products. Recently, it has been waived for certain products. The question is that AI information? Are you going to compile that? I'm not saying give the company secret, but what was your judgment call? Why this product was allowed? So would it allow the future applicant to be within that, but still out of Q1, Q2 sameness and say, okay, you don't have to do much over this. We think it's appropriate. So that finally, I believe that this is going to remain a helpful tool for development. And please correct me wrong if I'm wrong, that it will never replace a study that demonstrates bioequivalence, right? You will never have AI accept a failed bioequivalence study. Now, there are some differences across the Atlantic. Over there, pharmacokinetic modeling has been used, to my knowledge, sometime to justify, because of the variability of the reference product or something, doing pharmacokinetic modeling and saying that we would have been in this. And there have been a couple of approvals because their pharmacokinetics demonstrates both safety and efficacy. So in the US, is there ever going to be a time when AI will say, oh, nonetheless, since the in vivo study is failing, we will accept it? So these are some of the, you can say, comments at the beginning of the workshop, and hopefully we will discuss it. Thank you.
So let's talk about your first question, right? As I mentioned in my talk, I do think that one of my predictions for the future use of AI is that AI will increase the consistency of FDA's communications with industry. And part of it is you mentioned the challenge, right? If it's not accessible to a reviewer, right, the full scat of what, just internally, what FDA said to other applicants and other reviews over time, right, then you have the possibility of saying something different. If AI tools, when we use them internally, increase the visibility to our review staff of what other review staff have said in similar situations, right? I think that's an area that it will lead to better communication. And that's not that's not just search, because it's sort of concepts. It's did someone I think to give you a sense of why it's difficult is, did someone raise the same issue for a different drug product and use different words to describe it? And if the reviewer isn't sort of personally familiar with that, or their supervisor isn't, there's not a guarantee that someone would know about that. And I think as AI tools make our internal stuff, the internal things FDA has done more visible to internal FDA staff, then there are opportunities to make things in lots of different ways more consistent. And that's something that certainly we aspire to.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit expand on that. I think about maybe 6-7 years back, when we have an issue, we would send an email to all of the offices and say, hey, did you find this issue in any of your applications, and kind of rely on somebody's memory. I mean, those days are probably, hopefully behind us, in terms of managing knowledge and extracting the right information. And that's what we are sort of exploring, the AI capability. We have an initiative of what you call consistency and standardization. I mean, of course, we don't want to be a sort of a checkbox exercise. that's one of the reasons why we review information, right? That so that we take all of that information and also prior knowledge. We just have to be careful in how we use the prior knowledge, but we use the prior knowledge to make certain, judgment and risk evaluation within our review and make that decision. So hopefully, that this whole process is going to improve much more, and you will see that, from outside, that obviously, because it used to be always a complaint that if I, send this file to a reviewer X versus Y, I will get a different answer depending upon the, mood and the climate of the situation. But hopefully that's not the case, and we're going to make progress on this. So, AI tool is, we use many other tools, but obviously AI, we are absolutely exploring AI, how to do that. And one more thing, and I think you will hear probably in the afternoon, at least in the generic bioequivalence and generic program, we are using structured assessment. I know the OPQ also uses that. And I think that has been very, very helpful ultimately to get to some kind of a data hub where we can, extract information in a more consistent and reliable way.
Yeah, and I think the fundamental question was asked in there was, what is the scope of AI, right? What is the intention of using AI? And if we think from that perspective, Rob made very clear, empathetic no when it comes to would AI replace reviewers. But if we think of reviewers, we ask this question because probably we are simplifying the job of reviewers. Reviewers are not just doing review, right? They have excellence in two areas, science and regulations. And in addition to that, they collaborate, they communicate, they negotiate. They are a little bit of statistician, they are a little bit of data scientist. They really keep up with the emerging trends. So they are researchers in a way. And so all these skills come together when a reviewer is performing their task of review. And so when it comes to AI, the idea is not that we can take a model, we can take ELSA, we can take AI and make it like a multi-tool. It has scissors and knives and a torch and everything. It's about picking one particular area and doing it probably 1,000 times better than a reviewer can. Can it help with just the research part so that reviewer is freed up to use their critical judgment in science and regulation? Can it help with structuring data, accelerate that part so that, again, reviewer can focus on their core task of science and regulation? So what is the scope of AI? I don't think we are looking at AI as, okay, can ELSA do drug substance review or bioequivalence review or this task? We are looking at that within that review where we can alleviate burden on reviewers so that they can focus on the core job they have, which is critical thinking regarding science and regulation. And that's how the scope of AI would probably evolve, that there would be few tasks, subtasks within the review, within the surveillance or any other area that AI would do 100 times, 1,000 times better, and still critical thinking, critical judgment, science, regulation would belong to reviewer, and reviewers are freed up to really focus on that core expertise.
I think we are running a little over time, so maybe the last question, really, if it's quick.
Thank you for allowing me. Get a couple of questions, if I may. Okay. In the first presentation, there were like 50 submissions that used AI. But everything combined, IND, NDA, biologics, and stuck in there. Coming from a generic company, I wanted to know, are there any applications for generic that used AI? That's question number one. Question number two is, the generic companies are making baby steps into this artificial intelligence and modeling and all those things. Most of the time, it is a one-man army, not like a 2,000 reviewers Dr. Lionberger mentioned. Okay. So we have to justify every penny that we are investing. So my question is, what is the immediate application in dossier preparation or review process, artificial intelligence. Are there any public freewares that are available so that the companies who are interested in artificial intelligence application to the generic drug development can try, build confidence, and go to their bosses and ask for investment for artificial intelligence software? There are so many vendors, we don't know which one to pick. That is the big problem. Finally, I want to thank Dr. Lionberger, encouraging statement. AI will not replace the knowledgeable scientists. That is a very positive message that is going. And everybody is afraid that by using Google Scholar or something, my job will be gone. So thank you very much for that encouraging statement, Dr. Lionberger.
Rob, can you provide a quick response?
Yeah, so I think on your question, so you in the industry, right, have to decide whether AI use is going to create value for you, right? It's not if it doesn't create value for it, you shouldn't use it, right? I mean, the generic industry, you make real products, like it's an actual thing. It's not some hype thing. If the AI doesn't help you make that better, you don't have to use that, right? It's not FDA's making it. But if there are places where it does do that, we want to make sure that you're able to do that without being concerned, oh, I used AI, FDA is not going to approve my product, right? We want to make sure that you're able to use things when they make your business more efficient. But the real test of AI in your company is it's a market test, right? Does what's available make things more efficient, right? It has to pass that test.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And for the interest of time, we have to conclude our panel session. For session one, let's give a lot of round of applause to our speakers and panel members. So now I'm going to welcome Dr. Meng Hu, who is our team leader in the data analytics team within the Division of Quantitative Methods and Modeling, and he will introduce and open the session 2 discussion.